Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another knife video. Today's video is a first impressions and tabletop review of the 5.11 CFK 7 Camp and Field Knife. Now for this review today, I've actually brought along some additional blades that are in a very similar size range to give you some comparisons, give you the pros and cons of this blade. This blade does have a lot of great things going for it, but in my opinion also some negatives. So I'd like to talk to you about all that and at the same time give you a little comparison to some other blades that you may be familiar with. Now one of the things that I like to do with a first impressions video is really take a look at the blade before I've had an actual chance to use it. So at this point this blade is completely unused. I've yet to bring it out into the field. I gotta say I am looking forward to it. I think it's going to feel pretty nice, but at the same time I just wanted to go through some of the points and take a look at it before I really had a chance to get it out in the field and give it a try. Now as the name suggests, the CFK 7 has a 7-inch blade. This is a plain edge blade, has a nice choil, a quality handle, good overall size, and is a pretty beefy knife. Now this blade is a 1/4 of an inch thick at the spine, but it exhibits a hollow grind, so it does get quite fine at the cutting edge and should exhibit pretty reasonable slicing capability given its overall beefy size. Now this blade is made in Taiwan, and the steel is SCM 435, which is some rendition of a stainless steel. Now at this point, in terms of the SCM 435, I'm having a little bit of a hard time getting a clear understanding what type of steel this would be a relative equivalent to. I'm going to continue to do a little bit more research and see if I can get a better clarification on that, but at this time it's not really evident and I do have some more research to do. Now the CFK 7 has fiberglass reinforced nylon handles. They are reasonably comfortable, but in my opinion, I kind of wish they covered the entire tang of the knife. As you can see here, there is an exposed tang for the duration of the entire handle on the top and the bottom of this blade. And to me, that adds just a tiny little bit of discomfort. I think part of it is in combination with these textured scales. If it was either a smoother scale or maybe even fully filling out this particular handle, it would feel a little bit better to me, but at the same time it doesn't overly bother me, at least in terms of my initial feel, and I think over the long haul I'll find that this actually does fit my hands pretty nicely. Now as you can see, this handle is quite large, so for somebody with smaller hands this may not be the best fit. I typically wear a large size glove, so for me having a slightly larger blade and larger handle is pretty advantageous. I think for me what caught my attention about this blade right away is its similar features to other blades that I tend to like. For me, in my typical camp knife, I do like a slightly larger blade, something in roughly the 6 to 8 inch range, so this fits very nicely being a 7-inch blade. I typically like a knife that has a finger choil, and this definitely has a nice, generous finger choil. What I also tend to like about blades is a slightly larger handle, and in this case that works out pretty nice for me too. One thing that I could take or leave with this particular knife is how thick the spine is. This is a 1/4 of an inch thick. I think for me what I would tend to prefer is something closer to a 3/16, more like the SE6 or something along those lines. I do very much like a 3/16 steel when it's a carbon steel. I'm not sure if in this case where it's a stainless, having that 1/4 inch thickness is going to be an advantage, but at least at the same time it does have a very fine hollow grind, so I think in that regard this should have plenty of heft and also a nice slicing capability. Looking a little bit closer at some of these details, you will notice that this knife has an exposed pommel on the butt end of the handle. It has removable handle scales and does actually have the ability by design to allow you to wrap this handle in paracord. I personally don't think I would do that. It's not a style I prefer. I'd rather have these handle scales on here, but at least you do have the ability to unbolt these if you want to. You'll notice that in certain locations along the spine of the blade, you do have some strategically placed jimping. This for me is not a big deal. It is very round and does not have any real sharp qualities to it, so it doesn't bother me. In fact, when I grip the blade, you'll notice that my thumb doesn't really even rest on that particularly, and especially if I'm choking up and holding on to that finger choil. Now in terms of the overall fit of the blade, you'll notice that if I hold the blade in a typical style with my hand fully enveloping that handle, I have a real pronounced grip and really index right into this little choil area. Now what I can tell you is this does feel quite comfortable through here, being reasonably narrow, but where it gets kind of thick through here, I feel as though I am going to develop a little bit of a hot spot primarily on my middle finger where it's trying to grip and gets a little bit on that hump there. It may be just a little bit large for me in this grip, but at the same time, once I choke up into that choil area, it does feel a little bit better, but at the same time, that little hump there does create almost a hot spot now for my ring finger. So not a perfect handle design. I think it's suitable. It'll probably be okay, but at the same time, I see a little bit of a flaw where this gets really thick through this area and then gets thin through here and then a little more thin back here. I just wish this had a little bit more contouring to it so it wouldn't be quite so hot in that one particular location. Now, one design element of this handle that does work quite well is the fact that the spine swoops down through the handle area coming off the spine of the blade, and so when you grip that, I feel like the meat of the palm of your hand really kind of indexes into that area well and gives you a real natural contour where your thumb and palm meet up with the blade. So you end up with a real nice contact area, kind of distributing that weight right through here and giving you a good bearing surface for when you're really performing work and pushing with the blade. So time will tell whether or not that's comfortable for me. I'll be really interested to see if this piece and design element works well when I get this out into the field and actually use it. Now this knife does have a black oxide coating. At this point, I have no way to tell how much durability that coating will have. For me personally, I typically don't like coatings anyway, so I would likely remove these scales and actually strip this coating. Now the other thing that I'm not really too sure is if these logos are actually laser etched or if they're simply painted on top. They do feel like they may be on top of this black oxide coating, but again, time will only tell if I strip the blade or see if this stuff actually rubs off. Now personally, I very much like this sheath. It is a hard molded plastic sheath, but when you insert the knife, you have a good quality retention. It actually looks really cool. I like the two-tone quality of this with that sort of tan color and then the black pronounced on all these little grommets and rivets, and then the clip, the strap, and then just the way the knife fits, that black tang coming over. I think it's a really nice looking package and pretty sharp looking overall. Now in terms of the quality of the retention, there's literally no rattle whatsoever. If you hold the blade upside down and shake it, it feels very firm. I can feel a little bit of wiggle starting to develop as I do that, but at the same time, you also have this retention strap that you can use over the blade to really get it locked into place. Now this sheath does come set up with this retention strap. It's kind of a rubberized and flexible material, and it has a nice quality snap on the top. One of the features that I like about this knife, which is kind of unique and I have not yet quite seen this on any other blades, is this snap. So I'm going to focus in here and give you a little bit more detail. So this snap design is kind of unique. As I mentioned, I haven't quite seen this before. It's actually a molded piece of the sheath that's raised up a little bit, and then there's a screw head that's holding the snap into place. So as you bring the retention strap over the top, it's basically going to index and snap onto this raised snap and give you that retention for the overall ability to keep this blade in the sheath. So that's pretty cool. It's a neat little system. Like I said, I haven't really seen it before. Kind of an innovative little design and definitely a neat feature. Now the sheath came stock with 2 MOLLE clips. These are okay. They're not very high quality. I mean, they're decent. They're actually considered to be Blade Tech. But to me, I guess, I don't know. I'm not sure about the longevity of these and how these are going to hold up. They are a shorter design, which is kind of nice because they don't stick out too far past the knife. And the other little downfall to me, at least in terms of these Blade Tech MOLLE locks, is that this cannot be run right now as a drop sheath. I do prefer a drop sheath in general. I like to get it a little bit lower carried on my legs and on my hip so it's easier to draw the knife, and especially a knife of this size. So to not have that's a little bit of a downfall, but at the same time, this is set up pretty nice to lash it to a bag. Really carry it on your system or even on your belt if you don't mind it riding just a little bit higher. So just taking a quick look at how this thing rides, having these MOLLE clips, you'll see that this knife does ride way up into my ribs. I mean, it's literally halfway up my torso. Being such a large blade, I really wish this had a dangle carry option to really get it further down where I could draw the knife easily. And the other thing too, as me being a right-handed carrier, I would actually like to carry this blade on my left-hand side with the dangle and be able to kind of cross-draw it. So anyway, this blade is, again, very nice, and I like the sheath, but the overall carry system is a little bit lacking. Now another pro for this sheath is that it can be set up for both a right hand or a left hand carry, so it's totally ambidextrous, and that works out well for righties and lefties. And just some final details about the sheath. You'll notice it is quite easy to grip the knife while it's in the sheath, and there is a little ramp here, which is very nice for the deployment of the blade. Comes out nice and smooth. Again, going back in, a good positive lock, and with that retention system, definitely no worries that the blade's going to fall out. Now moving on here, I would like to compare the CFK7 against some other blades that you may recognize. And really, to me, the one that this most closely resembles is probably this Schrade SCHF 52M. When you compare some of these overall design characteristics, you'll notice a very similar blade shape, similar grind, finger choil, similar size handle. Of course, the ergonomics are a little bit different, but obviously that's the case with every single knife. And now comparing this to some other knives that I own, here you see it against the SE6. Now my SE6, I do not currently have my handle scales. I'm kind of in the middle of a project with this, and obviously the grinds are different. But that just gives you an example, if you're familiar with the SE6, just how large this Camp 7 actually is. It is a quite large blade, and so obviously comparing it here against a smaller blade just gives you that size reference. Now similar to the SE6, here's the Boker Vox Rolled. Just giving you another example of a typical size camp knife and what you get in comparison to the CFK7. Now here you have another blade that's in the 7-inch blade class, the Becker BK7. Totally different, completely not at all the same, but the reason why I show this to you side by side is just a lot of you may have familiarity with this BK7, and at least at this point you do get to see that size comparison. So here you go with two blades that are both in that 7-inch blade class and a good side by side to really get a feel for how big the CFK7 really is. Now another knife that has some similar blade characteristics is this K-Bar Potbelly. The only reason why I say that, both of these blades have 1/4-inch thick spines, and they both have a hollow grind. Now the hollow grind on the CFK7 is significantly more pronounced than it is on this Potbelly, so I believe this will have a superior slicing capability than this Potbelly. And if you've seen my review on this, you'll see that that is actually one of my real sort of frustrations with this blade, is the inability for it to slice. You know, some people say that this is a hollow grind, It feels a little more like a flat grind to me, but if this is considered to be a hollow grind, at least I can see it up compared next to this, and in that regard, this is a much more pronounced hollow grind. And you can actually really see that and pick it up on camera, the way that looks. I mean, it's definitely pronounced, gets nice and thin at the bottom, and even with that sort of thick spine up on top, I think this should be a pretty nice slicer. Now, one of the things that had me shocked when I first picked up this blade was just how overall heavy it feels. I mean, this thing definitely feels like it has some real significant weight to it. You know, in general, I've been sort of more used to these smaller, more nimble blades. To me, this is almost the ideal size for a camp knife, if you're going to put it in that class. And so when I really got this in my hands and felt how heavy it was, I was really shocked. And that, I think, is really the difference in just how thick that difference between 3/16 and 1/4 of an inch is over the entire length of the blade. I mean, that adds a ton of steel, a ton of mass. This thing should be able to just hammer down into some wood, hopefully do some good quality batoning tasks, but at the same time, it's not going to be quite as nimble as some of these other blades, and I know it's going to take me just a little bit of getting used to this before I feel comfortable with it. So alright guys, there you have it. A real quick look at the 5.11 CFK 7 camp and field knife. You know, this blade really is a self-proclaimed camp knife. I can see that. I mean, is this going to become something that's a go-to for me every time I go out? I just want to grab this, get my hands on it, and use it? Well, I'm not so sure. Time will tell. I think the handle geometry is a little bit of a drawback right off the get-go. It's not quite as comfortable as I would hope. I'm not totally sold on the 1/4 inch spine. I think that makes it just a little bit unwieldy. I'm very interested to see how this edge holds up. And with this Taiwanese steel, I'm just hoping that it at least has a solid heat treat and has the ability to keep a good sharp edge after a good amount of use. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.